Every house, every king, and every battle has its own truth. But there are stories older than crowns, darker than the night, and more dangerous than any blade. They were never written in books. They were whispered to fire, to the trees, and to the dead gods. And today, we dare to uncover one of them. The wind beyond the wall was a living thing, wild, cruel, and endless. It howled across the frozen plains, threading through the blackened pines and whispering over the bones of those who had tried to cross its domain. The brothers of the Night's Watch rode single file through that wasteland, their cloaks snapping in the gale like torn sails. At their head rode Sir Alaric Stark, Lord Commander of the Watch. His face was hard as the ice around them, his eyes gray and sharp beneath the rim of his hood. He was a Stark through and through, stern, quiet, and bound by duty. Yet even he could feel the weight of the darkness pressing close that day. The cold was not only in the air, it was in the earth, in their horses, in their bones. "7 hells," muttered Sir Darren Royce behind him, stamping at his horse's side. "It's like the world's been swallowed by winter itself." "Mind your words," Alaric said without turning. "The old gods hear such talk." The younger knight fell silent. Even he knew that beyond the wall, in the haunted reaches of the north, the old gods were not just carved faces in trees. Some said they still watched, still walked. They had ridden north from the Shadow Tower 3 days ago, answering a call that none of them had wanted to hear. A wildling clan, the Ice River clans, men hardened by frost, had vanished from their villages. Not a soul remained. Their fires had burned out, their dogs frozen where they lay, their tents shredded by something unseen. When word reached Castle Black, the old bear had sent ravens to all 3 castles, commanding a search. Alaric had volunteered to lead the ranging himself. Duty came before comfort, always. But now, seeing the ghostly trees stand like sentinels around them, he wondered if this duty would lead him home, or into a grave of snow. They made camp that night beneath a cluster of frozen weirwoods. The pale faces of the trees stared down at them with eyes of red sap, tears frozen into their bark. The men spoke in low voices, huddled near their fires. None strayed beyond the circle of light. Alaric sat apart, his gloved hands resting on his sword. Its name was Icefang, forged of castle-forged steel, a relic of House Stark, passed to him when he took the Black. His father had not been pleased, nor had his brothers. A Stark belonged in Winterfell, not on the Wall. Yet Alaric had chosen differently. The Wall needed strength, and he would give it his life. A sound drifted through the night then, a whisper, faint but clear, like the rustle of silk in a still room. Alaric's head rose. He turned his gaze to the trees. A figure stood between them. For a heartbeat, he thought it was only mist. Then the figure moved. A woman, tall and slender, her skin pale as moonlight, her eyes as blue as winter stars. She wore no cloak, no armor, yet the snow did not touch her. Every sound in the camp died. Even the wind seemed to still. "Who goes there?" Alaric called, rising. The woman's voice floated across the clearing, soft as a sigh. "You seek what is lost, Lord Commander. But it is not only the wildlings who are missing. There are other souls, older ones, waiting to be found." The men around him stirred uneasily. Some reached for their blades. "Stay your hands," Alaric ordered. He stepped forward, eyes fixed on the stranger. "You are far from any hall of men. What name do you bear, lady?" "I have been called many things," she said. "To some, I am a dream. To others, a curse. But you, Stark of the Watch, You may call me the Lady of the Cold." A murmur rippled through the rangers. Old tales whispered of spirits in the far north, maidens of frost who could freeze a man's heart with a kiss. Alaric had never given such stories weight, but as he met the woman's eyes, he felt something stir inside him, a strange calm, a stillness deeper than fear. "What do you want of us?" he asked. The lady smiled, and the air seemed to grow even colder. "Peace," she said simply, "between your kind and mine, but peace must be born in sacrifice." "What sacrifice?" "You will know soon enough. Come to me when the dawn is gone and the moon is high, alone." Her gaze lingered on him, almost tender. "Do this, and I shall show you the truth beneath the snow." Then she was gone. The wind rose again, and the men blinked, finding only emptiness where she had stood. For a long while, none spoke. "Ghosts," muttered Royce, voice trembling. "That's what she was, a ghost come to lead us to our deaths." Alaric did not answer. He could still feel the weight of her gaze, like frost on his skin. That night, sleep would not come to him. He sat awake by the fire, watching the flames burn low. Each crackle seemed to whisper her words again. "Come to me when the dawn is gone." When the moon rose high and silver, Alaric rose quietly and took up his sword. He told himself it was duty that guided him, to uncover what haunted the north, to learn what force had devoured the wildlings. But deep within, another voice whispered, "You want to see her again." He stepped beyond the ring of light and into the forest. The snow fell soundlessly, covering his tracks as he went. And somewhere in the dark, a soft voice began to sing, a song of ice and sorrow, older than men, older than the wall itself. Alaric followed it. The forest swallowed him whole. The light of the campfires faded behind him until only the moon remained, a pale, cold eye above the world. The trees stood like pillars of glass, their branches heavy with frost. No sound stirred, not even the whisper of the wind. Alaric's breath came in white plumes before him, and the crunch of his boots on snow echoed like thunder in the silence. He walked for what felt like hours, though time seemed to have lost its meaning. The deeper he went, the brighter the moon grew, until it bathed the clearing ahead in a ghostly silver glow. There, at the heart of that frozen wood, she stood waiting. The Lady of the Cold. Her hair shimmered like spun frost, her gown trailing behind her like mist upon a lake. The air around her seemed alive, the snowflakes dancing and swirling though no wind moved. Her eyes caught the moonlight and held it, two frozen flames burning in the darkness. "You came," she said softly, her voice a melody that seemed to reach into his chest and still his heartbeat. Alaric stopped a few paces away, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "I keep my word," he said. "But if you mean to harm me or my men, You'll what?" She interrupted gently, her smile faint but knowing. "Strike me down. You could no more wound me than you could wound the winter itself." He hesitated. "You are no mortal woman." "No," she said, taking a step closer. "Nor are you merely a man. You are of the first men, blood of the old kings, bound to the wall that keeps the darkness at bay. I can feel its weight upon you." He said nothing. Her words stirred something deep in him, a memory of oaths sworn in the god's wood of Winterfell, before heart trees older than the wall itself. The lady tilted her head, studying him. "You built a wall to keep death out," she said. "But death is not your enemy, Alaric Stark. It is part of you. It is what gives your oaths meaning, your courage worth." "I came seeking the truth," he said, his voice firm. "Wildlings have vanished, and my men will die if I return empty-handed. Tell me what hunts in these woods." Her eyes gleamed. "Something ancient stirs beneath the ice," she whispered. "Something your kind has long forgotten. I would show you if you would let me." He hesitated. Her beauty was terrible, like a blade of glass, cold and perfect, and every instinct within him cried out to flee. Yet there was also something else, a pull stronger than fear or reason. "What are you?" he asked. "I am memory," she said. "The last echo of a covenant broken by your forefathers. Once the world was one, ice and fire bound together, but men, in their pride, sought to master death itself. They severed the bond, and winter took shape in grief." She extended her hand toward him. "Take my hand and see." Alaric reached out slowly, his fingers trembling despite himself. When his skin met hers, it was like plunging into frozen water. The world shattered, light and sound and breath torn away in an instant. He saw visions, flashes of an age long past, the world before the wall, the children of the forest dancing around weirwood fires, the first men kneeling before them, blades laid down in truce. Then war, burning forests, blood upon snow, faces carved into trees screaming in silence. He saw the others born of weirwood magic twisted by sorrow, pale warriors with eyes of blue flame. They were meant to be guardians, bound to the land, not destroyers. But something had gone wrong. Their hearts froze, their souls turned to ice. Then he saw himself, standing upon a field of frost, sword raised high, the lady beside him. Behind them, legions of shadows stretched to the horizon. He tore his hand away, gasping. The clearing was still. The lady watched him, her expression unreadable. "What was that?" he demanded. "The truth," she said. "Your kind made us and cast us out. You built your wall to keep us forgotten. But now the bond is broken and the night grows hungry once more." Alaric's breath came ragged. "If what you say is true, then help us stop it. Help me protect the realms of men." Her eyes softened, though they remained impossibly cold. "There is only one way to heal what was broken. One who bears the blood of both North and Night must bridge the rift. A king, neither living nor dead, bound to the wall forever." She stepped closer until her breath brushed his cheek. "You, Alaric Stark." He recoiled as if struck. "No, I am sworn to the Watch. I serve no crown, no throne." "The Watch is dying," she said. "Its brothers dwindle, its vows crumble. But you could give it new strength, immortal guardians who never tire, who never fall." Her hand brushed his cheek, cold enough to burn. "I can make it so." He wanted to pull away, to draw his sword and drive her back into whatever void had spawned her. But her eyes held him fast, and beneath the fear, a strange yearning took root. To be free of exhaustion, free of loss, to stand forever, a sentinel against the dark. He thought of his brothers at the wall, of the years of cold and death. How many had died for nothing? What if he could change that? "What must I do?" he asked quietly. The lady smiled, slow and sorrowful. "All you must do is trust me." She drew him closer, and her lips met his. The kiss was like the breaking of glass, pain and fire and frost all at once. He tried to scream, but no sound came. The cold tore through him, filling his veins, freezing his heart until it no longer beat. The world fell away into a blinding white silence. When he opened his eyes again, the snow was gone. He stood upon a plain of ice beneath a black sky filled with strange, shimmering lights. His breath no longer clouded the air. He felt nothing. No heartbeat, no warmth, no fear. Only a vast stillness. The Lady of the Cold stood before him, her smile changed. no longer tender, but triumphant. "It is done," she whispered, "the first of the undying, the first of the new kings of winter." Alaric looked down at his hands. They were pale, his veins faintly blue beneath the skin. His sword, Ice Fang, now shimmered with a ghostly light. He raised his eyes to her, and the world itself seemed to shudder. Far away, at the edge of the forest, the brothers of the Night's Watch stirred from uneasy dreams. A wind rose, cold and strange, and in its heart they thought they heard a voice. It was Alaric's voice, calling their names. But when they followed it, they found only footprints leading into the snow, and not a single one returning. The dawn that followed broke pale and thin across the wall, though few saw it. The world beyond was silent. No ravens returned. No horns blew from the shadow tower. Days passed, and still no sign of Sir Alaric Stark or his rangers came. At Castle Black, the old bear stood upon the wall, his fur cloak billowing behind him, and watched the far horizon as if willing the snow to part. When a rider finally appeared, a lone black cloak upon a white horse, hope flared for a moment among the brothers. But as the gate creaked open and the rider passed through, that hope froze like water in a winter stream. The horse was lathered in frost, its breath pale and thin, eyes rolling with terror. Its rider was Sir Darren Royce, youngest of Alaric's men, his face white as the snow clinging to his cloak. His lips were blue, his eyes wide and staring. "What happened?" the old bear demanded, gripping the boy by the shoulders. "Where's Sir Alaric? Where are the others?" Darren's mouth worked soundlessly for a moment before words came in a hoarse whisper. He called to us, my lord. From the forest. We heard his voice in the wind." "Alaric?" Darren nodded, trembling. "We followed the sound, but when we reached the clearing, he was there waiting, or something wearing his shape." The men around them exchanged uneasy glances. "He was pale as death," Darren went on, his eyes burning like blue stars. "The others were with him, our brothers. But their faces..." He shuddered. "They were dead, my lord. Dead and walking." A chill fell over the yard. "He said we were free now," Darren whispered, "that the wall would never fall again. Then they came for us. I ran and didn't look back." That night, the old bear ordered the gates barred and torches lit along the wall, but no attack came, only silence, heavy and patient, like a beast waiting just beyond sight. Far to the north, beneath that same still sky, Alaric Stark, who once had been a man, stood upon a field of endless frost. Around him stretched an army, unlike any the world had known. The rangers who had followed him now stood in ranks, silent, their skin pale as the snow, their eyes burning blue. Each held a weapon rimed with frost, each still wearing the black of the watch. Alaric looked upon them, and something deep within his chest stirred. Not warmth, not grief. Those things were gone, but a memory of them. He turned to the Lady of the Cold, who stood beside him as serene as ever. "What are they now?" he asked. His voice had changed, soft, deep, echoing faintly like the wind through caverns. "They are yours," she said, "bound by the same oath you once swore, to guard the realms of men. But now they will never falter, never age, never die." He studied their still faces. "They are not living." "No," she agreed, "they are not." A silence stretched between them. The auroras above flickered blue and green across the black vault of sky. "Then what am I?" Alaric asked at last. The lady smiled faintly. "You are the first of the long night reborn, the bridge between life and death, the Night King." The words echoed across the frozen plain. Alaric felt them settle into him like a crown of ice upon his brow. "The Night King," he repeated, and though the name chilled him, it also filled him with a strange sense of purpose. For so long he had fought to hold the dark at bay. Now he was its master. Days, if days still passed in that frozen world, moved without measure. The lady taught him to command the cold, to summon wind and storm with a thought, to bind the dead to his will. The fallen wildlings rose first, their lifeless eyes opening to the Night King's call. Then beasts of the forest followed, bears, wolves, elk, all walking in death's quiet thrall. The Night King stood upon a glacier that split the sky and felt the power coursing through him. Yet deep beneath that cold strength, a shadow lingered. He remembered warmth, the fire at Castle Black, the laughter of his brothers, the voice of the old bear calling his name. He dreamed sometimes, though dreams had no place in that endless night. In them, he saw Winterfell, saw a boy with his face kneeling before a heart tree, swearing his life to the watch. He saw his father turning away, proud yet sorrowful. And then he saw the lady, her eyes bright with the same cold fire that now lived in his own. "Why do you hesitate?" she asked one night as they stood upon the frozen plain. "The power is yours. All that stands before you is the wall. Break it, and the realms of men will kneel or fall." Alaric turned to her. "You said this was to bring peace." "And so it shall," she said. "Peace eternal, the silence of winter that never ends." Something within him twisted at that, though he could not name the feeling. "There must be another way." Her smile faded. "You are changing, my king. Do you regret what you have become?" He looked down at his pale hands. "I regret that I can no longer feel the sun." She said nothing, but her eyes, though cold, seemed almost sorrowful. Then came the first rebellion. A band of free folk, led by a wild chieftain named Joramun, had gathered their tribes to stand against the dead. They struck by night, setting fire to the frozen forests, believing flame would drive the white shadows away. But the fire only fed upon them, burning bright for a heartbeat, before the cold swallowed it whole. Joramun himself was taken alive and brought before the Night King. He was a great man, tall and broad, his beard matted with frost and blood. Yet even in chains, his eyes burned with defiance. "You were a man once," he spat. "I see it in your face. You've forgotten the taste of breath, the warmth of a hearth, but your heart still remembers. You can fight it." The Night King said nothing. The wildling's words struck something deep within him, something buried, but not gone. Joramun leaned forward, chains clinking. "One day, the North will rise again. Fire will answer ice, and your kind will fall." The Night King's gaze lingered on him. "Then may that day come," he said quietly. He turned away, and the guards dragged Joramun into the snow. That night, for the first time since his transformation, Alaric Stark wept, but his tears froze before they could fall. The Lady of the Cold watched from afar. Her expression was unreadable, but when she turned away, the wind carried her whisper across the ice. "So it begins." And far to the south, in Winterfell, the weirwoods shuddered. Their red sap ran like blood through the snow, and the old gods seemed to stir, as if awakening to a storm long foretold. The Night King had risen, and the wall, though it still stood, had begun to dream of its own ruin. Winter fell heavier with each passing moon. Storms rolled down from the frozen north, thick with snows that blotted out the sun for weeks at a time. Crops withered, rivers froze, and villages huddled in silence beneath roofs heavy with ice. Word spread through the north that the dead no longer slept. that shadows walked where torches failed, and whispers spoke in voices long buried. South of the wall, few believed it at first. Tales told by wildlings and broken men were common, and winter always birthed its share of madness. But then the first Black Brothers from the Shadow Tower staggered through the gates of Winterfell, pale and half mad, speaking of a commander returned from death. They called him the Night King, a name carried on every fearful tongue. Brandon Stark, called Brandon the Breaker, the last true king in the North, listened in grim silence as the survivors told their tale. He was young still, though there was iron in his bearing. The direwolf banner of his house hung heavy behind him in the great hall, its shadow stretching across the stone floor like a living thing. When they had finished, Brandon rose. "If what you say is true," he said, "then the wall no longer guards us. It hides our doom." No man spoke. The maester cleared his throat softly. "My lord, there are older writings, tales from the first men, of a lord commander who took a pale queen beyond the wall. They say she bound his soul with hers, and together they ruled the dead." Brandon's eyes narrowed. "My blood sits that wall," he said quietly. "If this creature was once a Stark, then it is for House Stark to end him." Messengers rode that night, carrying ravens to the mountain clans, to the barrows of the old kings, and even beyond the wall, to the wildling tribes who still lived free under Joramun's scattered banners. One by one, the Northmen answered. By spring's thaw, what little thaw remained, an army had gathered upon the Frostfangs, men of the first men's blood, wrapped in furs and wielding bronze and steel. Wildlings came as well, grim-faced and wary, led by none other than Joramun, who had escaped his chains by what some called a miracle, and others whispered was the work of the old gods. When Brandon met him for the first time, the Wildling king laughed and clasped his arm. "So, the wolf lords come north at last," Joramun said. "We both lost kin to this cold fiend. Let us end him together, or die trying." That night, beneath the shimmer of the northern lights, the two kings swore a pact, the North united for the first time since the Age of Heroes. Far beyond their camp, upon the icy plains that had once been forests, the Night King stood beside the Lady of the Cold. Below them, their legions gathered, thousands of dead men, armored in frost, their blades gleaming with blue light. The air itself seemed to hum with their stillness. "They come for you," the lady murmured, her voice carrying through the still air. "Men of fire and breath. They would unmake what you have become." The Night King's gaze was distant. In the reflection of the ice beneath his feet, he saw his own face. Not as it had been, but as it was now. Pale, ageless, and crowned with frost, his eyes burned with the same light that shone in the sky above. "They come because they must," he said quietly, "as I must stand against them." The lady turned toward him, her expression unreadable. "Do you doubt me, my king?" He met her gaze. "You gave me power, but you also took something from me. My heart beats still in my dreams, though I no longer feel it in my chest." Her hand brushed his cheek, tender as falling snow. "It beats for me now," she whispered. "We are bound, Alaric Stark. Through you, winter will reign eternal." He flinched at the sound of his name. "Do not call me that. That man is gone." "Then forget him," she said. "Let the world that forsook you freeze and fall into silence." But even as she spoke, a sound echoed across the plain, the deep, rolling call of horns. The dead turned their heads as one, blue eyes flickering. On the horizon, torches glimmered like stars descending to earth. "The living come," the Night King murmured, He raised a hand, and the wind rose with it. The aurora dimmed as the storm gathered, vast and unending, its heart black as the void. The Lady of the Cold smiled faintly. So it begins. The battle came with the dawn. Brandon the Breaker's host advanced across the white waste, shields locked tight, their torches held high against the storm. The wildlings struck first, archers loosing fire-tipped arrows into the swirling dark. They burned bright for an instant before the wind devoured them. Then the dead came. They fell upon the living in silence. No war cry, no roar, only the hiss of blades through snow and the breaking of shields. The first line of men was swallowed whole. Fire clashed with frost, and screams echoed across the endless ice. Brandon fought at the front, his great sword Wolfbane cutting through the dead like moonlight on water. Beside him fought Joramun, his horn slung at his side, wielding an axe that had belonged to his father. Together they drove deep into the heart of the storm, but every man they felled rose again. The Night King stood watching from a ridge of ice, his expression calm, almost sorrowful. When he raised his hand, the ground itself cracked, and from beneath it came the frozen corpses of ancient kings, clad in rusted bronze and bone. They joined his host, silent and endless. Brandon saw him then, the figure of ice and shadow crowned in frost. Fury blazed in the young king's chest. "There!" he shouted. "The false king! To me, men of the north!" They charged. The clash that followed was legend. Fire meeting ice, man against death. Brandon reached the ridge, his blade striking the Night Kings with a sound like the breaking of worlds. Steel met frost, and the air shuddered with their power. "You were a Stark once," Brandon shouted. "End this madness." The Night King's eyes burned brighter. "I am what you will become," he said. "When your bones lie frozen, I shall remember you." Their blades locked. Brandon felt the cold creeping through his arms, turning muscle to stone. He knew then he could not win by steel alone. He looked to Joramun, who stood upon the slope, raising the ancient horn at his belt. "Now!" Brandon cried. Joramun blew. The sound was unlike any horn the world had known. It shook the air, the earth, the sky. Ice cracked for leagues around, mountains split, and the wall itself shuddered far to the south. The Night King staggered, a light breaking across his pale face as cracks spread through the ice beneath his feet. The Lady of the Cold screamed, a sound like the rending of glass, and the storm faltered. Brandon drove his sword forward, striking the Night King through the heart. For an instant, blue fire blazed, then went dark. The Night King fell to his knees, frost turning to snow around him. The lady reached for him, but he raised a trembling hand. "No," he whispered. "It ends here." Her eyes filled with fury and sorrow. "You cannot end what you are," she said. "You can only delay it." Then she was gone, her form dissolving into snow and wind. The dead fell still. The storm broke. When the light returned, the Night King's body was gone, vanished like mist beneath the rising sun. Brandon the Breaker stood upon the ice, his sword shattered, his breath ragged. Around him lay the fallen of both sides, frozen together in death. Joramun came to stand beside him. "Is it done?" he asked. Brandon stared north, where the wind still whispered faintly, like a voice beneath the snow. "For now," he said, "but winter remembers." And somewhere beneath the wall, deep in the heart of the ice, a faint blue light flickered, waiting. Years turned to centuries, and the battle upon the white waste passed into legend. Bards sang of Brandon the Breaker and Joramun, whose courage ended the reign of the Night King. The wall stood stronger than ever, its foundations thickened with ice and spells. its sentinels vigilant once more. Men whispered that the north had been saved, that the dead had returned to their rest. Yet in the still places of the world, in caves deep beneath the frost fangs and frozen lakes untouched by sun or fire, something cold endured. The Night King's body had vanished, but not his memory. It lingered like frost in shadow, waiting. And when men ceased to believe in him, he began to dream. The dream came first as whispers, distant, faint, carried on the wind. The lady's voice called through the dark, weaving across the centuries. Awake, my king. The world has forgotten the cold, but the cold remembers you. Beneath the wall, in caverns sealed by the builders of old, ice stirred. There was a heartbeat in the silence, slow, steady, patient. From that heart, cracks spread through the frost like veins of pale lightning. South of the wall, the north rebuilt itself. The line of stark kings endured, though in time their crowns were traded for lordships, and their tales became songs rather than warnings. Brandon's descendants ruled wisely, but even they came to doubt the truth of the long night. Maesters in their towers spoke of superstition, not history. The dead were just stories to frighten children. But the North is a land that keeps its memories, and some never stopped believing. At the edge of the world, near Eastwatch, a ranger named Sir Garrett Snow rode alone through a storm that blotted out sky and earth alike. His horse was near spent, its breath steaming in the bitter air, yet still he pressed on. He had been sent to follow strange lights beyond the shivering sea, pale fires that had burned in the night for 3 days straight. At last, he reached the cliffs where the ice met the sea. There, upon the shore, the snow glowed faintly blue. Garrett dismounted, sword drawn, and knelt to touch the light. It was cold, not merely chill, but biting, alive. The ice cracked beneath his hand. A shape stirred beneath it. He stepped back as a figure rose slowly from the frozen ground, encased in frost. A man, or what had once been a man. Its eyes opened, blue and endless as the winter sky. Garrett stumbled backward, horror clawing through him. He turned to flee, but the storm had swallowed his path. The last thing he heard before the cold took him was a voice, distant, ancient, and sorrowful. The watch has ended, but winter has not. Far away at Winterfell, the weirwoods trembled. The Maester noted strange omens, ravens flying by night, wolves gathering near the wall, the auroras burning brighter than in living memory. The Lord of Winterfell, a stern man named Cregan Stark, dismissed such talk as old wives' tales, yet in his dreams, he saw the wall cracking, its heart glowing blue. He told no one. Days later, a raven came from Castle Black. The letter within was brief, written in a hand that shook. Lord Stark, we have found something in the ice. Come at once. Lord Commander Mors Umber. Cregan rode north without delay. When he arrived, the brothers led him to a cavern newly opened by the melting of an icefall. Deep within, frozen into the wall like an insect in amber, was a sword, long, pale, rimmed with frost. Its edge gleamed faintly in the torchlight. "Steel does not keep in ice so," said the Lord Commander. "No man forged this. It's as if the cold itself birthed it." Cregan stared at it for a long time. The sword seemed to hum faintly, a sound at once beautiful and terrible. "Seal this place," he said at last. "No one enters again." They obeyed, but the ice around the blade did not rest. In the nights that followed, rangers whispered of shapes moving within the caverns, shadows without heat, footsteps without sound. One man claimed he saw a figure of frost standing over the sealed wall, its eyes like stars. By dawn, he was gone. In the years that followed, strange tidings reached the wall. A fishing village on the Bay of Seals vanished without a trace. Herds were found frozen where they grazed, though the air was still. In the frost fangs, the free folk spoke of white shadows walking again beneath the moon. The old tales returned. One night, a storm rose that shook the wall to its bones. Lightning flashed across the ice, and from its heart came a sound, a low, deep rumble like the groan of the earth itself. Deep below, the sword awoke. The ice that bound it cracked and split, the sound echoing through the cavern like thunder. From that rift, pale mist poured forth, spreading through tunnels and halls. The frost thickened on every stone, creeping up torches and armor until the flames sputtered and died. The brothers of the watch fled in terror. When they returned at dawn, they found the cavern empty. The sword was gone. And in the snow outside the wall, there were footprints leading north. Each one rhymed with ice, each filled slowly by falling flakes, as if the world itself sought to hide them. North of the wall, a storm gathered. The free folk fled south, their cries lost in the blizzard. In their wake, the trees froze solid, their branches snapping beneath invisible weight. And at the heart of the storm, where no man could tread, a figure rose from the frost. He was tall, pale, and crowned in shards of ice. His eyes opened, burning the color of a winter sky before dawn. His hand reached outward, and from the ground around him, others began to rise, warriors long dead, beasts of bone and frost, all drawn to his silent call. The Night King had awakened. For a time, he did not move. He stood gazing south, the wind whispering through his hair like ghostly breath. Within his chest, there was no heartbeat, yet something stirred, a fragment of memory, faint as a dying ember. He saw a face, Brandon's, fierce and defiant, and the echo of his own voice. You can only delay it. He turned his gaze toward the horizon, where the faintest glimmer of fire still burned beyond the wall. The lady's voice came again, carried on the snow. The world has forgotten, my king. It is time to remind them. The Night King raised his arm. The storm roared in answer, and the dead moved as one. In the distance, the wall stood vast and white against the gray sky. Ravens fled before the coming cold, their cries fading into silence. Far below, in the halls of Winterfell, a dire wolf lifted its head and howled. The long night was stirring once more. The wall groaned under the weight of winter. The wind screamed through its high passes, carrying a sound that was not entirely of the storm, a deep, thrumming note that made the torches flicker and the ravens cower in their cages. The brothers of the Night's Watch whispered of it in dread, though none would name what they feared. At Castle Black, Lord Commander Mors Umber stood upon the icy heights, his fur-lined cloak whipping about him, and stared into the blizzard beyond. The world beyond the wall had vanished into gray, yet in that emptiness, he thought he saw movement, shadows shifting in the snow, far too many to be the wind. The horn atop the wall sounded once, long and mournful. It had not called in months, not since the last ranging had gone missing. Mors turned to his second, Sir Haldan of Carhold. How many men do we have fit to fight? Less than 100, my lord, Haldan answered grimly, and half of those are green boys from the south. The rest are ghosts themselves. Then ghosts we shall be, Mors said, tightening his cloak. If the dead have returned, let them remember that the wall stands still. He looked to the east, where the first pale light of dawn should have broken. Instead, the sky burned faintly blue, a cold, unnatural glow that turned the snow to glass. Mors's breath caught in his throat. Fetch the maester, he said quietly, and ready the ravens. Whatever comes tonight must not die with us. Far below the wall, in the halls of Winterfell, Lord Cregan Stark sat beside the heart tree in the godswood, its white bark gleaming with frost. The red eyes of the weirwood watched him silently as he knelt in the snow, gloved hands pressed together. "My forefathers swore to guard the realms of men," he murmured. "If the dark returns, so must the blood that first broke it." The wind stirred through the branches, whispering faintly, though whether it was the gods answering or only the storm, he could not tell. He rose and turned to his steward. "Summon every bannerman from the Wolfswood to the Dreadfort. Winter is upon us again." Within a fortnight, ravens flew to every holdfast in the north. The lords answered the call. Karstarks, Manderleys, Umbers, Glovers, all gathered beneath the direwolf banner. They came with torches and iron, with axes that gleamed red in the firelight. When at last they marched for the wall, the snow fell heavier than any man remembered. Yet still they pressed on, the song of their ancestors on their lips. "Winterfell is the sword of the north," they cried, "and winter will not take us again." But north of the wall, winter had already won. The Night King walked among his legions, the ground cracking beneath his feet. The dead moved with him in silence, an endless host of pale warriors, their armor rimed with frost, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Beside him drifted the Lady of the Cold, her gown flowing like mist. "You waited long," she said softly, her voice carrying through the storm. "The world has grown soft, my king. Its fire is dying. Soon there will be no warmth left to resist you." The Night King said nothing. His gaze was fixed upon the horizon, where the wall loomed faintly through the snow, vast and terrible. Within his chest there was no heart, yet he felt something stir at the sight of it, a faint ache, like the memory of breath. "I remember," he murmured. The lady turned to him, her eyes glinting. "Remember what?" "The vow," he said, "to guard the realms of men, to hold the darkness at bay." Her expression turned to sorrow. "You are the darkness now. That oath was broken long ago. It was men who cast you out, who forgot your name." He did not answer, but when he raised his hand, the storm thickened, swirling around him in spirals of blue and white. The dead obeyed his silent command, spreading across the frozen plains like a tide of snow. Behind them, beasts of bone and ice followed, bears with eyes like shards of moonlight, wolves tall as horses, and serpents that slithered through the frost. The long night was marching. At Castle Black, the horns blew thrice, the call that had not been heard since the days of myth. "White Walkers!" cried the watchman atop the wall. His voice was torn away by the wind, but the words spread like fire through the fortress. Men scrambled for weapons, torches, and oil. The maester ran to the Raven's Tower, his hands shaking as he loosed bird after bird into the storm. Below, Lord Commander Mors Umber stood before the gate, sword in hand, his breath steaming in the cold. "We hold until Winterfell arrives," he said. "No retreat, no surrender." The first of the dead came with the snow, a tide of shadows, silent but swift. Their blades struck like falling ice, shattering shields and armor. Men screamed, fire roared, and still the dead came. The wall trembled. Moors fought like a man possessed, cutting down wights faster than they could rise. But for every one that fell, 2 more took its place. "Light the oil!" he shouted. "Burn them!" Flames surged along the base of the wall, devouring the nearest corpses. Yet the wind rose with the fire, and in moments the flames guttered and died. The cold was too strong. A shape appeared in the storm then, tall, pale, and crowned in frost. The air itself seemed to bow before him. The Night King raised his hand, and the fire turned to ash. Mor's Umber stared up at him, eyes wide with horror and awe. "In the name of the first men," he rasped, "what are you?" The Night King's voice was like the creak of glaciers, slow and deep. "The end you were sworn to guard against." He reached forward, and the Lord Commander froze where he stood, his skin turning white, his eyes burning blue. The gate shattered. The dead poured through. By dawn, Castle Black was silent. Only the wind moved among the corpses, and the wall itself seemed to sigh, as if remembering an old sorrow. When the Stark host reached the edge of the haunted forest days later, they found only ruins. The wall loomed above them still, but its light had dimmed, its spells weakened. Lord Cregan stood before it, his cloak snapping in the wind. "So it begins again," he said quietly. At his side, a young ranger knelt to the snow. "My lord, the tracks, they go south." Cregan looked toward the horizon, where the white plains stretched into shadow. "Then we ride south," he said, "for if the wall no longer keeps the darkness out, then the darkness walks among us." Behind him, the wind rose once more, carrying with it a faint, distant whisper, an old voice, colder than death. "The wall remembers, the watch endures, but all things end in winter." And far away, beneath a sky that had forgotten dawn, the Night King moved southward, his army unending, his eyes fixed upon the warm lands of men. Snow fell without cease, thick as wool, blanketing the world in silence. The wild lands north of Winterfell had become an endless white plain, where no bird sang, no beast stirred, and no sun broke the sky. The long night had returned, though men in their pride refused to name it so. From the Dreadfort to Deepwood Motte, the beacons had been lit, a line of red flame stretching across the north. Smoke coiled into the gray heavens like signals to sleeping gods, yet no answer came. Lord Cregan Stark led his host southward along the King's Road. It was no longer a march, but an exodus. Villagers, hunters, children, all fleeing the cold that devoured the land behind them. Cregan rode at their head, his dire wolf-gray cloak rimed with frost, his eyes fixed on the dark horizon. "The wall has fallen," his steward murmured beside him. "Castle Black burns. The watch is gone." Cregan did not answer. He had seen the smoke himself, black pillars rising where the wall once shone white. For 2,000 years the wall had stood, the labor of giants and the sorcery of the children. Now it was broken, and through that wound, winter bled south. At dusk, they reached the ruins of a holdfast once sworn to House Umber. The walls were shattered, the gates torn apart by no human hand. In the courtyard lay the remains of men and beasts, frozen mid-stride. The snow had preserved them like statues. Some still gripped swords, others stared skyward with eyes of blue glass. Cregan dismounted slowly. "Gather the bodies," he said. "Burn them all." As his men obeyed, he knelt beside one corpse, a young boy no older than his own son, face pale beneath the frost. The boy's hand clutched a wooden token carved in the shape of a direwolf. Cregan took it gently and closed the boy's eyes. When the pyres were lit, the flames reached high into the night, defiant against the cold. But the fire's warmth did not last. The wind rose, carrying with it a faint sound, a distant horn, low and mournful. Cregan looked north. Across the plain, shadows moved, slow, steady, countless. "Form the lines," he shouted. "Steel and fire." The men obeyed, torches flaring to life along the battlements. Archers knocked flaming arrows, and spearmen set their points. The horns blew again, closer now. The dead had found them. They came as a tide of pale figures, eyes glowing in the dark. Their armor was blackened with frost, their blades rimed with ice. Behind them, taller shapes strode, creatures with crowns of frozen thorns and hands that shimmered like crystal. The White Walkers. The first volley of arrows streaked across the night, burning bright before vanishing into snow. A few struck true. Most did not. The dead did not scream or falter. They simply climbed over their fallen and pressed on. Cregan drew his sword, the ancient Valyrian steel blade Winter's Wrath, its dark rippled metal drinking the firelight. "For the north!" he cried, and the charge began. Steel met ice, fire met shadow. Men screamed, horses reared, and still the dead came. The living fought with all they had, but exhaustion was a crueler foe than any sword. For every white that fell, 2 more rose in its place. At the heart of the storm, atop a mound of frost, stood the Night King. The snow bent around him, as if even the wind obeyed his will. He watched the slaughter below with eyes that saw everything and pitied nothing. He remembered this place. He remembered fighting for it long ago, when he had been a man, a Stark of Winterfell, sworn to guard the living. But that memory had grown faint, buried beneath centuries of cold. Still, a fragment stirred. He saw the direwolf banners, the firelight dancing on steel, the courage in their faces. For a heartbeat, he hesitated. The Lady of the Cold appeared beside him, her form half mist, half moonlight. "Do you waver, my king?" she asked. "They are of my blood," he said quietly. "Your blood is gone," she replied. "The world you knew has died. Only the ice remains." He turned his gaze back to the battle. Below, Cregan Stark fought like a man possessed, carving a path through the dead. His sword flared blue where it met the cold, and each stroke burned brighter than flame. When Cregan's eyes found the figure upon the ridge, he knew. "Alaric," he whispered, though he had never known the man, only the legend. "If your soul still lingers within that corpse, hear me. The North remembers. Let us not fall to our own blood." Perhaps the Night King heard, for he lifted his hand, but no attack came. The snow stilled. The wind fell silent. For a moment, the world itself held its breath. Then the lady moved. She raised her own hand, and the sky cracked with blue fire. Lightning struck the ground where Cregan stood, throwing men and horses into the air. The snow melted to steam, and when it cleared, the Night King was gone from the ridge. He stood before Cregan now, close enough that the frost from his breath gathered on the Stark Lord's armor. "So it ends," the Night King said, his voice a whisper of ages. Cregan lifted his sword. "If it ends with me." Their blades met, ice against fire. Sparks flew, frost shattered, and the air screamed with their clash. Cregan's Valyrian steel bit deep into the Night King's chest, but no blood flowed, only mist. The ancient king struck back, his hand closing around the Stark's throat like iron. Cregan gasped, the cold seeping through his veins. Yet before darkness claimed him, he drove his blade once more into the creature's heart. The Night King staggered, his grip faltering. The blue fire in his eyes flared bright, then dimmed. For an instant, the storm faltered. The lady cried out in fury, her form unraveling like smoke. "No! You cannot kill what has no life!" The Night King turned to her. His expression was unreadable, yet in his eyes there was something, an echo of sorrow, or perhaps release. "I was never meant to live," he said. With a sound like cracking ice, his body shattered. Shards of frost whirled into the air, then melted into snow. The lady screamed once more, and the storm imploded, collapsing inward until there was only silence. The dead fell where they stood. The blue light faded from their eyes. The battlefield lay still, blanketed in the same cold peace that had followed the first long night. Cregan Stark fell to his knees, gasping, his sword broken in his hand. Around him, his men stared in disbelief as the dawn broke for the first time in months, the sky bleeding gold over the snow. He looked north. The ice was quiet. "Let it be done," he whispered. But as the wind passed through the still air, it carried a faint voice, distant, weary, eternal. All things end in winter, yet winter never ends. And far away, beneath the wall's ruins, the frost began to stir once more. The dawn that followed was no true dawn at all. The sun broke through the clouds for a single hour before the light dimmed once more, as if frightened to linger upon the north. The fires that burned upon the battlefield hissed and sputtered, their smoke rising in gray ribbons that twisted into the wind. Lord Cregan Stark stood among the dead, his cloak heavy with frost and blood. Around him, the last of his men moved in silence, gathering the fallen, tending to the wounded. What remained of his army was broken but alive. The dead had ceased their movement with the shattering of the Night King, and for the first time in living memory, the air did not sting with the bite of unnatural cold. Yet even in victory, the taste of dread lingered. The master of Winterfell, a stooped, gray-bearded man named Orlin, picked his way through the ruin, leaning on his staff. "It is over, my lord," he said softly, though his eyes betrayed no certainty. Cregan sheathed the remnants of Winter's wrath, the Valyrian blade now cracked through its hilt. "The battle is done," he said. "But the war—" He turned northward, where the wall had once stood, a jagged line of ice and stone now broken by a wound that stretched for leagues. "The wall is no more, Orlin. That was our covenant with the darkness. Without it, what keeps the night from walking again?" Orlin followed his gaze. "Perhaps the gods themselves will see it restored." Cregan gave a weary smile. "The gods are as silent as the snow. They buried the dead that day, men and monsters alike. No fire could be spared, and so they dug great trenches in the frozen earth. The ground was hard as iron, and their shovels bent with each strike. By the time the last of the fallen were laid to rest, the northern sky was burning red. That night, as the camp slept, Cregan walked alone to the edge of the battlefield. The snow had already begun to cover the graves. He looked out over the endless white, and for a moment he thought he saw movement. A shape drifting between the shadows, pale as the moonlight. He blinked, and it was gone. He turned back toward the fires, his breath steaming in the air. But when he looked again, there was a figure standing before him. She wore no cloak, yet the cold did not touch her. Her hair was silver white, her skin pale as frost, and her eyes gleamed like shards of blue crystal. Cregan's hand went to his sword before he remembered it was broken. "Who are you?" he demanded. The woman smiled faintly, and in her smile was both sorrow and power. "Once I was called many things," she said. "To the children, I was a spirit of snow. To men, a curse, but to him," her gaze drifted toward the north, "I was the lady of the cold." Cregan's breath caught. "You should be dead." "Death and I are well acquainted," she said. "But I am not bound as he was. He was of men's blood. I am of the storm." He took a step back. "If you seek vengeance, you'll find none here. Your king is gone. The north is free." The lady tilted her head. "Free? Do you think his fall ended the night? Foolish mortal. The Night King was not the beginning, but the vessel. The cold he bore was older than men, older than the wall, and it stirs still." Her words struck him like a blow. "Then what was this war? he asked. An echo, she said softly. The ice remembers, and memory does not die. He sought to master it, to hold dominion over what should not be held. You ended him, but the power he awakened cannot be slain by sword or fire. Cregan's hand tightened around the hilt at his side. Then what must be done? The lady stepped closer, and the air around her shimmered with frost. There must always be a guardian between worlds. The wall was built not merely to hold back death, but to bind it. If that bond is not reforged, the long night will come again. Her gaze held his. You carry his blood, Stark of Winterfell. The same fire that once froze in his veins runs in yours. It is you who must restore the wall. He stared at her, disbelief warring with dread. You speak madness. No man can raise what giants and gods once built. No man, she agreed. But a Stark might. The old magics still sleep beneath your keep, in the roots of your weirwoods. The blood of your house was always touched by the cold. You feel it even now, do you not? The whisper in the wind, the ache in your bones. He said nothing. Go home, she said. Take the memory of him with you. Bury it deep in stone and snow. And when the world has forgotten, the wall will rise again. But remember this, nothing that is bound forever sleeps forever. Her form began to fade, scattering like frost on a thawing morning. Wait, Cregan called. Why tell me this? Why help me? Her voice was faint now, barely more than a sigh. Because even in death, he remembered you. He fought the cold at the end, as he did before he was mine. Tell your sons. He was no monster, only a man who stood too long in the dark. Then she was gone. The snow fell heavier, erasing her footprints before his eyes. Cregan stood there for a long while, staring into the emptiness before turning back toward the camp. When he returned, he said nothing of what he had seen. Weeks passed, and the survivors made their way back to Winterfell. The keeps of the north were half buried in snow, and wolves howled from every hill. Cregan walked the halls of his ancestors in silence, the weight of the lady's words pressing upon him. One night, he went to the crypts where the kings of winter slept in their stone tombs. He walked between the statues, each bearing the likeness of a Stark long dead. At the far end stood an empty alcove, newly carved, his father's tomb, waiting. He knelt before it, the broken blade of winter's wrath laid across his knees. The Night King is gone, he said quietly, but his shadow remains. If it must fall upon my house, let it fall upon me first. As he spoke, a cold wind swept through the crypts. The torches flickered, and for an instant, the statues seemed to watch him. Somewhere deep beneath the earth, he heard the faintest sound, a pulse, slow and distant, like a heartbeat in the stone. That spring, when the snows began to melt, the people of the north awoke to a strange sight. Along the broken scar where the wall had fallen, new ice had begun to form. Not natural frost, but crystal, smooth and white, growing upward as if from within the earth. By summer's end, it had risen a man's height. By autumn, a horse's, and in the winter that followed, travelers spoke once more of a wall of ice, gleaming in the starlight like glass. They said it was thinner than before, weaker perhaps, but alive, its heart pulsing faintly with blue light, as if it remembered the hand that had once commanded it. None knew what power had raised it, nor dared to ask. But in the cold nights, when the wind howled across the tundra, some swore they heard a whisper carried upon it. A Stark guards the realms of men, and far below, deep beneath the frozen wall, where light could not reach and time could not touch, the last shard of the Night King's heart stirred once more, still and silent, yet not dead. For winter, though broken, never truly ends. Years passed into decades, and the war between ice and fire faded into song. Bards sang of Lord Cregan Stark, the wolf who ended winter, and of the shattered wall that rose again by magic unknown. Yet songs lie as easily as men do, and the truth of what lingered beyond that wall was buried beneath silence. The North endured. Snow fell each winter and melted each spring. The wolves of Winterfell multiplied. Their howls once more became the music of the long nights. Children grew, became men, and forgot the horrors their grandsires had whispered of. The dead no longer walked. The Night King was gone, or so it was believed. Far to the north, beyond the new wall's gleaming heights, there stretched a land that no living man dared to enter, a waste of wind and frost, where nothing moved. Yet beneath that desolation, deep under layers of ancient ice, a heart still beat, slow and patient. It did not beat as mortal hearts do. Each pulse was a whisper of cold, spreading through the ground like roots of frost, reaching outward inch by inch. With each winter, it grew stronger. At Winterfell, another Stark ruled now, Edric, son of Cregan, a man of quiet strength and sharper mind. He was no warrior like his father, but he possessed a restlessness born of long peace. In his youth, he had heard the old tales and dismissed them. Yet as the seasons turned, he began to dream of a place shrouded in snow, where blue light pulsed like a living star. The dreams came often, each more vivid than the last. He would wake in darkness, heart pounding, the taste of cold upon his tongue. One morning, after a dream so fierce it left frost upon his pillow, he summoned Maester Rendell to his solar. "You served my father," Edric said, pacing before the hearth. "Tell me truly, did he ever speak of what happened at the wall?" Rendell hesitated. He was an old man now, with eyes like cloudy glass. "Little enough, my lord. He returned from that battle a changed man, spoke seldom of it, and when he did, it was always of duty. He would walk the godswood for hours, whispering to the trees." "Did he ever mention the lady?" The maester's face tightened. "He did once. Only once. He said she came to him after the battle, and that she warned him the wall would one day live again." "Live?" Edric frowned. What did he mean by that? "I do not know," Rendell admitted. "He ordered me to record nothing of it, said it was not knowledge meant for men." Edric turned to the window, where the faint glimmer of the wall could be seen even from afar. "And yet here we are," he said softly, "still beneath its shadow." That winter, the dreams worsened. In them, Edric saw his ancestors standing upon the ice, faces pale and still, their eyes glowing faintly blue. He saw the wall cracking again, light spilling from within. And always, he heard a voice calling, a woman's voice, soft as snowfall. One night he could bear it no longer. He rose before dawn, took his sword, and rode north with only a handful of men. They traveled for days through wind and storm, until the wall loomed before them, vast and silent. It was smooth as glass, its surface unbroken save for the faint shimmer that ran through it like light under water. Edric dismounted and placed a hand upon the ice. It was warm. The others crossed themselves and backed away. "My lord," said one of the guards, "this is foul sorcery. We should not linger." Edric ignored him. He pressed his palm harder against the ice, feeling the pulse beneath it, a slow rhythm, steady and deep. Then the world fell away. He was standing in a place of endless white. Snow drifted upward instead of falling. Before him stood a woman cloaked in frost, her hair long as moonlight. "You bear his blood," she said. Her voice was familiar, though he had never heard it. The blood that remembers. Who are you? Her eyes were clear as crystal. I am what remains. The Lady of the Cold, he whispered. She smiled faintly. So they still name me, but I am less than that now. A shadow of a shadow, his shadow. The Night King? At the name, her expression darkened. That name was born of fear. He was a man once, as you are, a Stark. He stood against the end, but the end claimed him all the same. The world believes him gone, but ice does not die. It waits. Edric felt the air thicken around him, each breath turning to mist. What do you want of me? To remember, she said, to bear the truth when the world forgets. The wall is no barrier now. It is a prison. His heart beats within it. The cold that once sought to conquer now binds itself in sorrow. He shook his head. If what you say is true, then why show me this? Why torment me with ghosts? Because the binding weakens. Her gaze turned north to a horizon that burned faintly blue. Every spring shortens. Every winter deepens. The balance fails. When the last light fades, his heart will wake, and the wall will fall once more. Edric's hand went to his sword. Then I will fight him, as my father did. Her smile was sad. You cannot fight what you do not understand. The Night King was made, not born. The same magic that created him flows in your blood. That is why you dream. That is why the wall calls to you. He took a step back, horror dawning in his eyes. No, I am no creature of ice. Not yet, she said, but all blood answers its source in time. The wall remembers, and when it wakes fully, it will not only seek vengeance, it will seek return. The snow swirled around them. What must I do? He demanded. Her form began to fade. Go home, Stark. Tell your sons to remember the cold. Keep the fires burning. That is all that stands between the realms of men and the long dark. Wait, he shouted. What becomes of you? Her eyes, bright with something like grief, met his. I was never meant to end. Then she was gone. Edric awoke on the frozen ground, his men shaking him. The wall stood silent before him, the blue light gone. Yet when he touched the ice, he felt it still, the faintest pulse, like a heartbeat far away. He returned to Winterfell, but sleep never found him again. He grew old before his years, haunted by the lady's words. In his last days, he carved them upon the heart tree in the godswood. The wall lives, the north remembers, and the cold dreams still. When he died, the Meisters said it was in his sleep, but those who found him swore his eyes were open, fixed upon the window where snow fell softly against the dawn, and far to the north, in the hollow heart of the wall, something stirred. One breath, one beat, then silence again. Winter had not forgotten. It was only waiting. 100 years passed. The wall stood as it ever had, its new height gleaming beneath the moon, the pride of men who had forgotten what it guarded against. Time smoothed the scars of the long night, burying truth beneath the songs of Meisters and the lies of memory. The night's watch dwindled into a shadow of itself. Few men, fewer vows, and none who believed in monsters. Yet in the long winters, shepherds on the frost fields sometimes saw strange lights dancing along the horizon, blue flames that flickered without smoke. They said it was the aurora of the old gods, but those who went to see them never returned. In those days, the Stark who ruled Winterfell was Lady Ara, a woman as sharp as the winds of the north. She had her father's eyes, gray and cold, and her mother's will of iron. Peace had reigned all her life, yet she distrusted it. The North does not forget, she told her council. and neither should we. It was late in the year of the frozen heart when the first omen came. A ranger of the watch, gaunt and wild-eyed, stumbled through the winter town gates, his hands blackened with frostbite. He was half dead from cold, yet when he saw Lady Ara, he dropped to his knees. "My lady," he gasped. "The wall! It bleeds!" The words rippled through Winterfell like fire through dry leaves. Ara listened as the man told his tale, how cracks had appeared in the ice, how the frost glowed blue from within, and how, at night, the watch heard whispers rising through the walls themselves. One man claimed to have seen a hand pressed against the ice from the inside, pale, long-fingered, and moving. Most dismissed him as mad. But Lady Ara Stark was not one to scorn fear. "Send word to the watch," she commanded. "We ride at dawn." They reached Castle Black after a week's hard travel. The keep was much reduced since its glory days. Only 24 brothers remained to man it. They met her at the gate, torches trembling in their hands. "My lady," said Lord Commander Dennis Hart, his voice rough with age, "I sent no raven. What brings the wolves of Winterfell so far north?" "The wall," she said simply. "I hear it bleeds." Dennis looked away. "The wall does many things, my lady. It moans, it shifts, it hums like a harp in the wind. But no man has seen it bleed. Show me." He led her along the ramparts. The cold was savage even for the north. It clawed at their faces, turned their breath to ice. The moon hung full, painting the wall in silver light. At first, she saw nothing, only the endless white. But then, as the wind fell silent, she heard it. A faint pulse, low and deep, like a heartbeat muffled by stone. "What is that sound?" she asked. "Some say it's the wind trapped in the ice," Dennis said. "Others say it's the magic of the first builders. I say it's nothing." But Ara could see the unease in his eyes. She pressed her gloved hand to the ice. It was warm. That night, sleep would not come. She lay awake in the guest's chamber, the sound of the wind scratching at the shutters. At length she rose, wrapped herself in her cloak, and went walking beneath the moon. The wall loomed high above her, a silver mountain. The air shimmered faintly around it, as though it breathed. She thought of the old tales, the Night King, the Lady of the Cold, the long war that men had turned into legend. Her father had told her once that every story hides a truth, and every truth hides a warning. A faint crack echoed through the stillness. She turned sharply. At the base of the wall, where shadow met snow, a line of blue light traced its way upward, slow and deliberate. The sound came again. Krrk, krrk, the groaning of ice under pressure. And then she saw it, a shape within the wall, pale and vast, moving beneath the frozen surface. For an instant, she could not breathe. The figure pressed closer until its face touched the ice. A man's face, if a man could be made of frost. Its eyes flared open, blue and bright as winter stars. Ara stumbled back, her hand flying to the dagger at her belt. But before she could draw it, the vision vanished. The ice stilled. The wall was only a wall once more. By dawn, the crack had spread a man's length higher. The watch gathered at the base, muttering prayers to gods they no longer served. "Has it ever done this before?" Ara demanded. Dennis shook his head. "No, my lady. In 1,000 years, never." Ara touched the ice again. "This isn't wind. It's waking." The Lord Commander frowned. "Waking?" She turned to him. "My father once wrote of a lady of the cold who said the wall lives. He thought her words a riddle. Perhaps they were not." Before he could answer, the horn atop the wall sounded. Once, twice, thrice. The men froze, None alive had ever heard the third call. From the northern plain came a cry, a wail that carried for miles, not beast nor man, but something between. The snow lifted in waves as shadows moved beneath it. "Get inside," Dennis roared. "Archers, to the heights." Ara stood her ground, eyes fixed on the horizon. Through the swirling storm, she saw figures approaching, pale and silent, their outlines blurred by snow. The dead walked again. "Seven, save us," whispered a ranger. "Not the seven," Ara said, drawing her sword. "The old gods are watching now." The first of the whites struck the wall with a sound like thunder. Others followed, climbing, clawing, their fingers cutting grooves into the ice. The watch loosed arrows, fire-tipped and screaming through the dark, but the creatures did not burn. They came on, relentless as tidewater. Then the wall itself began to move. The blue cracks widened, light spilling forth in shimmering streams. The heartbeat grew louder, faster. Ara fell to her knees, clutching her ears as the sound filled the air. The light became blinding, and for a moment, she thought she heard a voice within it. Faint, mournful, and terrible. "We are bound, not broken." Then the ice exploded outward. A wave of frost swept across the field, freezing men where they stood. The whites shattered under its force, their bodies turning to snow. The light dimmed, leaving silence. When Ara opened her eyes, the wall stood whole once more, the cracks sealed, the glow gone. Only one thing had changed. Carved into the ice where her hand had touched was a sigil, the head of a direwolf, its eyes twin points of blue fire. She rose slowly, her breath misting in the still air. The wall was quiet now, but she felt it watching her. "My lady," Dennis whispered behind her. "What happened?" Ara's voice was soft, yet it carried like wind through the snow. "The wall remembers," she said, "and it knows our name." That night, as Winterfell slept, the flames in its hearths burned low and strange. Some swore the fire flickered blue, and far beyond the wall, in the endless white where no man had walked in an age, a faint light appeared upon the horizon, cold, steady, and growing. The Night King's heart had not died. It had only learned to wait. The winter that followed Lady Ara's journey to the wall was one unlike any that had come before. Snow fell for half a year without pause, swallowing roads and rivers, burying keeps and crofts until the land itself seemed to sink beneath its own white weight. Wolves howled closer to the towns, and those who strayed from their fires vanished into the drifts without trace. At Winterfell, Ara ruled from the great hall, her face pale and drawn. The fire burned day and night upon the hearth, yet the cold lingered even there. She gave no word of what she had seen at the wall, only that the north must prepare, that food be stored, walls repaired, and fires kept high. Her master, the young and earnest Eldrin, begged her to rest. "My lady," he said, "the snows will pass as they always do. You cannot wage war against winter itself." But she only looked at him with eyes like tempered steel. "This is not winter, Maester. It is memory. The land remembers the cold that came before, and it wakes again." He could not understand. None could. Yet the men and women of the north obeyed their lady as they had obeyed her forebears. For though she was young, there was something in her bearing that reminded them of the first kings of winter. Grim, resolute, bound to duty, like iron to the forge. One night, as the storm raged outside and the wind sang through the stone halls, a knock came upon the gates. The guards opened them to find a single man standing in the snow, wrapped in the black furs of the night's watch. His face was white with frost, his eyes hollow. They led him before Lady Ara, where he fell to his knees. "My lady," he rasped, Castle Black has fallen." The hall went silent. "Fallen?" she said at last. "How?" He shuddered. "The ice broke from within. We heard it groaning for days, as if the wall itself were breathing. Then came the light, blue as a corpse's eyes. It burst from the stones, tearing the castle apart. The dead rose from the ice, not the wildlings' dead, but ours, brothers of the Watch, their faces pale as snow, their oaths forgotten. We fought, but there were too many. The wall is cracking again, my lady. It will not hold another year." The man's voice failed. He sagged to the floor, and when the maester knelt to help him, his hand fell away in a shower of frost. The ranger was dead before he hit the stones, his body turning to ice before their eyes. Ara rose slowly. "Summon the bannermen," she said. "All of them. The North will ride again." By spring's edge, though spring was only a word now, the armies of the North gathered upon the frost fields. Great hearths were built to keep the men alive, their smoke rising like pillars into the gray sky. Ara rode at their head, her armor chased with silver, her cloak the gray of the direwolf. Among her host were the sons of Karhold and the Dreadfort, the hill clans, and what remained of the Watch that had fled before the wall's fall. None came with cheer. They had all seen too much snow, too many hungry mouths. As they marched north, the world grew silent. Forests that had once whispered with life now stood frozen and still, every branch glittering like glass. The rivers had stopped flowing, trapped beneath their own reflections. The very air felt heavier, as if it bore the weight of centuries. At last, they reached the wall, or what remained of it. The great barrier of ice was shattered, its upper reaches slumped into the valley like the bones of a slain giant. Through its wound spilled a light that pulsed faintly blue, the same hue that had haunted Ara's dreams since that night she first saw the face in the ice. She dismounted, leaving her captains behind, and approached the breach. The ground trembled beneath her boots. "My lady," called Sir Bernard of Karhold, "do not go nearer. The cold is not natural." "Neither is what waits beyond," she answered. Within the rift, she saw not the wild emptiness of the lands of always winter, but a vast glimmering expanse, a plain of pure ice stretching to the horizon. And upon it stood figures, hundreds, thousands. At their center, a single form shone brighter than the rest. The Night King. He was changed. The jagged crown of frost still crowned his head, but his form seemed both more and less than human. A shape of ice and shadow, with light burning in his chest like the heart of a dying star. He lifted his hand. The air shivered. Ara felt it then, the pull, the old blood stirring in her veins. The voice of her forefathers whispered from the cold itself. "You are of us." The wall remembers. "No," she whispered aloud. "I am not yours." The Night King's eyes flared brighter, and the dead began to move. The battle that followed was like no other. The North fought not against men, but against the winter itself. The dead surged in endless ranks, each slain warrior rising again to fight. Fire helped, but never enough. Torches went out in the storm, and the cold devoured even the brightest flame. Ara rode through the chaos, her sword a streak of silver. Every swing cut through whites like scything wheat, yet for each that fell, two more came. "Hold!" she shouted. "Hold the line!" Her men obeyed until their hands blackened from cold, until their breath froze in their throats. Still, they stood. But when the Night King stepped forward, all light dimmed. He came without sound, his movements slow, inevitable. Spears of ice rose where he walked, skewering man and horse alike. The dead parted before him like waves before a ship's prow. Ara faced him at the breach, the blue light burning behind her. Her sword glowed faintly white, Valyrian steel, her mother's blade, named Frostbite. "So it comes again," she said. He did not speak, yet she felt his words inside her mind, colder than any wind. "You cannot fight what is in your blood." "I am no shadow of you," she said. "My blood remembers the fire that ended you." Fire dies, ice endures. He raised his hand. The air around her thickened, the frost creeping up her legs, her arms, her throat. But she did not yield. With a cry that shook the still air, she drove her sword forward. The blade met his chest, piercing the heart of blue fire. The Night King shuddered. Light flared, brighter than the sun, and for a moment the world was nothing but white. When it faded, the plain was still. The whites had fallen, their bodies collapsing into snow. The wall's wound sealed, ice reforming over the breach like a scar. Ara stood alone, her sword shattered in her hand. Where the Night King had stood, only a single shard of crystal remained, glowing faintly in the snow. She knelt and touched it. It was warm. The survivors returned south in silence. No songs were sung, no banners raised. Winter's grasp lingered, though the storms eased and the rivers flowed once more. Lady Ara ruled for many years after, but she never spoke of what had passed at the wall. Some said she carried the shard with her always, hidden within a locket upon her breast. When she died, the masters found her body lying peacefully before the heart tree, the locket open beside her hand. Inside, the crystal still glowed faintly blue, and though the years turned again, though spring came and went, and the snows melted from the hills, travelers on clear nights swore they could see the wall gleaming brighter than before, as if lit from within by a heart that would never stop beating. For winter sleeps lightly, and memory never melts. Many generations passed after the war of Lady Ara. Her deeds became legend. Her name was whispered beside Brandon the Breaker and the heroes of the Age of Heroes. The wall still stood, gleaming white against the gray sky, and men came to believe that the cold had been conquered forever. They sang of peace and harvest, of summers that stretched long and kind. Yet the North is a land that remembers, and the wall remembers most of all. At the dawn of the 4th century of peace, Winterfell was ruled by Lord Torrhen Stark, a man of wisdom and restraint. He was known as the Quiet Wolf, for he seldom raised his voice and never his hand in haste. Yet in his heart, he carried a secret unease, a whisper that came to him in dreams. Each night he saw the same vision: the wall, towering and immense, its surface shining with inner light. Then came a sound like a heartbeat echoing through stone, and a voice, soft, sorrowful, unmistakably human, whispered his name: Torrhen. He would wake drenched in sweat, the sound still thudding faintly in his ears. For months, he kept this to himself. But when the dreams grew stronger, he called for the Maester, a frail man named Theomore. "I see it every night," Torrhen told him, pacing before the hearth. "The wall breathes. I hear it calling, as if it remembers me." Theomore's eyes widened behind his spectacles. "My lord, such dreams are not without meaning. The Starks have always been tied to the old magics. Perhaps the wall is nothing more than ice and stone." Torrhen interrupted, though his voice lacked conviction. The Maester hesitated. "And yet, my lord, there are records older than any man living. They say the wall was not built merely to keep foes out, but to hold something in." Torrhen turned sharply. "Old tales, children's songs." "Perhaps," Theomore said quietly, "but even children's songs can carry truth." That winter was the harshest in 3 centuries. Snow swallowed the north as if the world itself sought to forget warmth. Rivers froze solid. Travelers vanished in white storms that never ended. Then came the ravens. They arrived from Eastwatch, wings tattered, eyes wild. The message they carried was brief. Strange lights in the north. The ice hums. Torrhen felt the blood drain from his face as he read the words. The dreams had come again the night before, louder than ever. He had seen shapes within the wall, figures moving slowly, endlessly, as though walking in circles beneath the ice. Within the week, he rode north with a company of guards and his eldest son, Cregar, a boy of 15 winters who begged to see the wall for himself. The road was near impassable. Snow buried even the tallest trees, and the air froze their breath into crystals that clung to their beards. When they reached Castle Black, they found it half empty. The few brothers who remained were huddled in the great hall, their eyes haunted. "The wall sings," said the Lord Commander, a gaunt man named Willis Rivers. "At night, we hear it, low and deep, like a drum beneath the ice. Sometimes we feel it tremble." "Have you seen anything?" Torrhen asked. Willis swallowed. "A shadow, my lord. Tall as a man, but not a man. We set fire to the ice, but the flames turned blue." Torrhen exchanged a grim glance with his son. "Show me." They climbed to the top of the wall as night fell. The wind cut like knives, and the stars burned cold above. For a long while, all was still. Then came the sound. It began as a faint murmur, an echo rising from deep within the ice. It grew into a steady thrum, a heartbeat vast and slow. The ground itself seemed to breathe. Cregar clutched his father's arm. "Father, look!" Far below, in the heart of the wall, light flared, a soft, pulsating blue glow that shifted and swelled like something alive. It spread upward, veins of light winding through the ice until the entire wall shimmered like glass beneath a torch. The men on the battlements fell to their knees, whispering prayers. Torrhen alone stood unmoving, his eyes wide with awe and dread. Then, from within the light, a voice spoke. It was not the voice of man or God, but something between, a whisper carried on the wind yet clear as thought. "Blood of the wolf. The wall remembers you." Torrhen's heart seized. "Who speaks?" he demanded, his voice shaking. "We are bound in ice. We wait in silence. But the heart wakes again." The light flared brighter. Through the ice, Torrhen thought he saw a shape, a figure kneeling, crowned in frost. The sight chilled him to the marrow. The cold is restless. The bond weakens. Fire must answer again, or all shall freeze. Then the light died. The sound ceased. Only the wind remained. They returned to the hall in silence. The men spoke little, though many crossed themselves or whispered of omens. "What did it mean?" Cregar asked once they were alone. Torrhen stared into the fire. "I do not know, but it spoke truth. The wall is alive, and whatever sleeps within it stirs once more." His son frowned. "If it wakes, what then?" He turned slowly. "Then winter will come, as it has not come in 1,000 years." That night, Torrhen sent riders to Winterfell with orders to gather stores, to strengthen the keeps, to prepare for a winter without end. But before the riders could depart, a cry went up from the wall. The watchmen had seen movement in the north, lights flickering across the plain, faint yet unyielding. "The dead walk again," murmured Willis. Torrhen watched the horizon, where the lights burned like distant stars. In the heart of the cold, he thought he saw a figure, tall, robed in white, walking toward the wall. For 3 nights they kept watch. The lights drew nearer with each passing hour until shapes could be seen beneath them, figures moving in silence, countless and unending. At last, On the fourth night, the horn sounded thrice. The dead had come. They struck at dawn when the sun was pale and weak. The first wave shattered against the wall's base, climbing with claws of ice. Arrows fell by the thousands, fire rained from the heights, but still they rose. Then the light within the wall blazed again, blue and fierce. The ice trembled, and from its surface burst shards of frost that impaled man and wight alike. The ground cracked, the men fled, but Torrhen stood his ground. "If you wake, then waken me," he shouted to the roaring ice. "I am Stark, blood of the wall, bound to its heart." Cregaard tried to reach him, but the light engulfed them both. When it faded, the battlefield was still. The wall stood silent once more, the glow gone. The survivors searched for their lord, but found no trace of him. Only a single handprint burned into the ice, larger than any man's, glowing faintly gray. Cregaard knelt before it, tears freezing on his cheeks. "Father," he whispered, "what have you done?" The men of the watch rebuilt Castle Black, but none dared climb the wall again. They said that sometimes, on the coldest nights, a figure could be seen walking within the ice, gray cloak billowing like smoke, and when the wind howled, it carried a whisper that made the torches gutter, and the brave men shiver. The wolf guards the wall once more, but others said the truth was darker still, that Torrhen Stark had not become its guardian, but its prisoner, that the wall had claimed him, as it had claimed others before, to keep the heart within from waking. Whatever the truth, the ice slept again, and far beneath, where no warmth could reach, two blue lights flickered faintly in the dark, eyes opening after a long dream. Winter was not done with men, not yet. Long centuries flowed like rivers of ice, erasing the footprints of memory. The tales of Torrhen the Quiet Wolf faded to rumor, his fate reduced to a line in the chronicles, vanished upon the wall during the last winter of his rule. The maesters in their towers dismissed it as folly, a myth to frighten children. The watch dwindled further, manning the heights with fewer souls each passing year. And yet, the wall endured. It loomed across the north like a frozen god, casting its pale shadow over a land that had forgotten what it owed to its cold sentinel. Kings rose and fell, dragons burned the skies, and still the wall stood, silent and unyielding. But silence does not mean peace, and sleep is not the same as death. For deep within its heart, something stirred. When the wall had stood for 8,000 years, there came to Winterfell a boy born beneath a red comet. The servants whispered that his first cry froze the water in his mother's cup. His name was Jonric Stark, though the small folk called him Snowborn, for no storm could chill him. He grew tall and quiet, his eyes gray as dawn, and his hair black as a raven's wing. He could walk the wolf's wood for days without losing his way, and wolves followed him at a distance, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. By the time he was 10, the old Septon who served Winterfell swore he had seen Jonric speaking to the heart tree, and that the carved face had whispered back. Lord Edryn Stark, his father, forbade such talk. Yet when he looked upon the boy, he saw something old behind those calm eyes, a depth that made him shiver. It was during the long winter of Jonric's 16th year that the dreams began. He saw the wall each night, rising vast and endless. In his dreams, it pulsed with light, its heart beating slow and heavy. Sometimes, he saw a man walking within it, a shadow crowned in frost. Other nights, a woman's voice whispered from the wind, "The wall remembers. The blood calls again." He told no one, but one morning, When the sky glowed pale and the snow lay heavy on the ramparts, a raven arrived from Castle Black. The letter it carried was written in a trembling hand. To the Lord of Winterfell, strange lights have appeared in the ice. The wall hums. The Lord Commander is dead. Jonric read the letter in silence, his pulse quickening. When his father saw his face, he frowned. "You've had the same dream, haven't you?" Jonric did not answer. "You will not go," Edrin said firmly. "The Watch will send word if they need us. The Wall's matters are for the Wall." But that night, Jonric saddled his horse and rode north beneath the moon. The journey took 3 days through driving snow. The land grew colder with each league, the trees sparse and white as bone. When at last he saw the Wall, it glimmered faintly blue against the sky, as though lit from within. Castle Black was near empty, its gates frozen open. He found only a handful of brothers there, hollow-eyed and whispering. They stared at him as though at a ghost. "You shouldn't have come," one said. "The Wall's waking. It calls to its blood." Jonric frowned. "What do you mean?" But the man only crossed himself and turned away. Jonric climbed the wall alone. The wind screamed around him, fierce enough to strip skin, but he did not feel it. When he reached the top, he looked north and froze. The land beyond was alight. Far across the plain, a faint glow shimmered on the horizon, like the ghost of dawn. It moved, pulsing, breathing, the same rhythm he had heard in his dreams. Then, from within the ice beneath his feet, a voice spoke. Snowborn. He staggered back. The sound came not through the air, but through the stone itself, vibrating in his bones. "Who are you?" he demanded. The blood that came before, the wolf that guards, the cold that binds. He knew then that it was no dream. The Wall itself was speaking, or something inside it. "What do you want?" he whispered. "To remember, to rise, to be free." Before he could speak again, the ice cracked. A web of blue light shot through its surface, spreading like veins. The world tilted, and he fell. When he awoke, he lay upon a field of glass. The sky above was black, lit only by shifting curtains of pale green. The Wall towered behind him, glowing faintly, and standing before him was a man. He was tall and robed in gray, his face pale, his eyes glowing faintly blue. A crown of frost gleamed upon his brow, but his features were not monstrous. They were familiar. "You are Stark," the man said, his voice like wind through ice. Jonric rose, his hand going to the dagger at his belt. "Who are you?" "I was the first. I am the Wall's keeper and its prisoner. Once, I was a man named Torrin." Jonric froze. "My ancestor." The pale figure nodded slowly. "The Wall bound me to its heart. I hold the winter in its chains, but the chains weaken. Then I will strengthen them," Jonric said. "Tell me how." Torrin's gaze darkened. "The Wall hungers for blood, the blood of its makers. It calls to those born of our line. It called to you. To bind it anew, one of us must take my place." Jonric's stomach turned to ice. "You mean die?" "Not die," Torrin said softly. "Endure. I have stood within this ice 1,000 years. I can hold no longer. The heart stirs again. If it wakes unbound, all the realm will freeze." Jonric stared at him. There must be another way. "There is none." Torrin's form flickered, his edges dissolving like mist. "The Wall remembers our blood. It must be given willingly." The ground trembled. The ice beneath them cracked, and through it shone a blue light, vast and terrible, the heart of the Wall itself. Jonric looked into it and saw faces, men, women, wolves, all frozen in eternal vigil. He felt their voices brush his mind, 1,000 whispers pleading, "Hold fast, do not let it wake." He turned to Torrin. "If I do this, will it sleep forever?" "For as long as men remember." Jonric took a long breath, his heart steady. "Then it is enough." Torrin placed a hand upon his shoulder. "You are stronger than I was. May your watch be longer." Then he stepped back, and the ice swallowed him whole. Jonric felt the cold surge through him. The blue light wrapped around his body, searing and freezing all at once. He fell to his knees as the world turned white. At dawn, the men of Castle Black saw the wall shining brighter than ever before. Its surface was smooth as glass, and within it, far above the ground, the faint outline of a young man could be seen, arms outstretched, eyes closed, bound in light. The heartbeat ceased. The hum fell silent. Winter eased. When the new Lord Commander sent word to Winterfell, Lord Edrin wept upon hearing the news. "He is gone," he said, "but the wall stands." And so it did, for another 1,000 years. Yet on cold nights, when the wind howls across the north, the Brothers of the Watch swear they hear a heartbeat in the ice once more, steady, slow, and patient. The wall breathes. The blood of the wolf guards it still. The ages turned as wheels of frost and fire. Kingdoms rose, burned, and turned again to dust. The wall remained, a mountain of ice untouched by time, taller than the clouds, more ancient than the memory of men. It watched in silence as dragons screamed across the sky and fell, as kings were crowned and buried, as the blood of the first men thinned into whispers of what had been. But some memories never die. They lie beneath the skin of the world, waiting. The wall dreamed. Within its heart, the figure of the young man remained, the boy Stark who had given himself to the cold. The glow around him pulsed faintly, like the last ember of a dying fire. Centuries passed as moments to the ice, yet the ember did not go out, and in the deep of one endless winter, when the sky itself seemed frozen, the ember began to grow. It began with storms unlike any living man remembered. They came first to the Bay of Seals, rolling down from the shivering sea in walls of sleet and thunder. The waves froze as they crashed against the cliffs, sealing harbors beneath thick sheets of glass. Fishermen spoke of lights beneath the water, cold flames dancing like ghosts. In Winterfell, the Meisters marked the omens with trembling hands. "The seasons falter," said old Meister Klein, his ink freezing in its pot. "We are entering another long night." Lady Mara Stark, last of Jonric's line, stood before the heart tree in the Godswood, her breath turning to mist. She had ruled only a handful of years, yet already she bore the weight of a queen grown old. "The wall has slept for 1,000 years," she said. "If it wakes, it will not be for mercy." Her captain shifted uneasily beside her. "My lady, the watch sends no ravens. We've heard nothing for months." "Perhaps there are none left to send them," she replied softly. "Or none who remember how." At last, she could wait no longer. She rode north beneath a sky thick with cloud, taking 50 men of her household guard. The journey was slow and bitter. Wolves followed them for days, gaunt shadows moving through the storm. When they reached the ruins of Castle Black, they found the gates half buried and the courtyard filled with snow. The watch was gone. Only silence met them, heavy as stone. Myra climbed the wall herself, though the wind tore at her cloak, and the cold bit her flesh through armor and furs. When she reached the summit, she saw the world stretched out before her, a vast plain of white and gray, without end or movement. And then she heard it, a heartbeat, slow, deep, patient. It came from within the wall as it had in the old songs. The ice beneath her feet shuddered faintly. Blue light flickered in its depths. She knelt, pressing a bare hand to the surface. "Jonric," she whispered. Ancestor, if your spirit yet keeps the cold at bay, hear me. The world trembles again. What must we do? For a moment there was only wind. Then came a voice, faint and hollow, as if carried from leagues away. The wall endures, but the heart grows weary. Maera's breath caught. Can it be strengthened? Only with blood. The bond fades with each generation. When the blood forgets, the ice remembers alone. What blood? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Ours. The light brightened, spreading in long, jagged lines up through the ice. The wall groaned like a waking giant. My lady, her captain cried. The ice, it's moving. She rose, turning to him. Ride south, she ordered. Tell them winter has broken its chains. He hesitated. And you, my lady? I am Stark, she said simply. I will not flee my duty. Then the ice cracked. The fissures spread outward, glowing blue, and from their heart came a sound, a cry like the wind through 1,000 graves. The men staggered, clutching their ears. The wall's light blazed brighter until it blinded them. When the light faded, Lady Maera was gone. Days later, a lone survivor stumbled into the frost fields, his beard rimed with ice, his mind half broken. He told of how the wall had opened and swallowed the Stark lady whole. He claimed he saw her silhouette within the ice, standing where the boy Jonric had once been, her hair streaming like silver flame. No one believed him, but his tale spread quickly. The masters of the Citadel dismissed it as madness, yet they sent ravens nonetheless, warning every lord of the realm that the wall had changed, and change it had. Its once white surface now gleamed faintly blue at night, a color no torch could mimic. Those who slept near it heard faint whispers, the sound of weeping, some said. Others swore they heard the beat of 2 hearts within the ice, one deep and slow, the other new and quick. Winter returned with vengeance. The crops died, the seas froze. In the farthest villages, strange figures were seen at dusk, walking the fields, pale, tall, and silent, their breath misting like smoke. Men said the Night King had risen again, but in truth, something stranger stirred. For within the wall, 2 lights now burned instead of one, the old and the new, ice and blood. The cold that had once sought to devour now bound itself to its keeper, and the blood of the wolves whispered from within the frost. The wall was no longer a prison alone. It had become a living thing, a sentience made of ice and memory, forged from sacrifice. In time, the storms eased, the skies cleared, and dawn broke once more upon the north. But the wall remained changed. No man of the watch climbed it again. No torch burned long upon its heights. Travelers who passed near swore they saw faces shifting within the ice. Sometimes a young man's calm, sometimes a woman's proud and sorrowful. And when the wind blew right, the air carried faint words, soft as snow falling. The blood remembers, the north endures. Maesters wrote of the miracle, of the Lady of Winter who had given herself to save the realms of men, though few truly believed it. Years became centuries. The wall stood unbroken. Yet on the coldest nights, when the moon shone white upon the frost, children born in the north woke from dreams of a silver-haired woman, walking through endless snow, her eyes bright with blue fire. She never spoke, but always she turned toward them, lifted a hand, and pointed north, toward something beyond the wall, beyond memory itself. And each of those children, when grown, felt the same pull in their blood, the same yearning when the first snows fell, a whisper half forgotten that said, "The wall breathes, the wolves still guard." Thus it was, and thus it would remain, so long as the cold had heart and the north had name. For winter was not death, it was promise. And though the long night might sleep for another 1,000 years, one truth would outlast them all. The Night King was never only one man, nor one age, nor one sin. He was the shadow of the wall itself, of every vow made in fear, of every sacrifice left buried in the snow. And he would return, as he always had, when men once again forgot that warmth was a gift bought dearly by blood and ice alike.